Bill 7 finally passes, the Democratic win that changed everything. President Hichilema. After weeks of tension, protests, and fierce national debate, Bill 7 has passed. Now, President Hakainde Hichilema has delivered a powerful verdict on the process itself, declaring that the greatest winners are the people and Zambia's democracy. But is this a unifying moment for the nation, or a statement that deepens divisions? Tonight, we examine what the president meant, what actually changed, and why Bill 7 remains one of the most contested political moments of our time. Good day, viewers. Welcome to another edition of InspirAfrica Official. I'm Nakash. It's been quite a week here, hasn't it? The kind of week where you wake up, check the headlines, and realize history is being written in real time. And today, we're diving into a story that has captured the attention of an entire nation. A story of perseverance, political warfare, and ultimately, democratic triumph. Picture this, a legislative chamber erupting in applause. Opposition members storming out in protest. A president standing firm amid a tempest of criticism, accusations, and political maneuvering. And at the center of it all, Bill 7, a piece of legislation that has been called everything from a beacon of progress to a threat to democracy itself. For months, this bill sat in limbo, trapped in the crossfire of partisan politics. It became a symbol, a flashpoint that divided a nation along ideological lines. Protests filled the streets. Talk shows became battlegrounds. Families argued across dinner tables, but what exactly is Bill 7? Why has it provoked such fierce resistance from some quarters and passionate support from others? What forces aligned to finally push it across the finish line after all these months of deadlock? And perhaps most importantly, what does this victory mean for the future of Zambia under President Hakainde Hichilema? Was this a democratic triumph? Or has something more complex, more controversial, just been set into motion? And when the dust settles, who will emerge as the true winners and losers in this political drama? Factual foundation, background and timeline. The revelation came to light in the early hours of last Thursday morning, when parliamentary sources confirmed what many had thought impossible just weeks before Bill 7 had secured the votes needed for passage. Let's rewind to understand how we got here. Bill 7, formerly known as the Constitutional Amendment Bill No. 7 of 2024, was first introduced to the Zambian National Assembly on March 15 of this year by the United Party for National Development government under President Hakainde Hichilema. The bill proposed sweeping reforms to the country's constitutional framework, including provisions for enhanced judicial independence, expanded civil liberties protections, and critically, a restructuring of electoral oversight mechanisms. From the moment it was tabled, the Patriotic Front opposition, led by former ministers loyal to ex-President Edgar Lungu, denounced it as a power grab. They argued the bill would centralize too much authority in the executive branch and weaken traditional checks and balances. By May, the bill had stalled in committee, buried under procedural objections and filibusters. Public hearings in June revealed a nation divided. Urban youth and civil society groups rallied in support, while rural constituencies and traditional leaders expressed skepticism about certain provisions. July brought a turning point. President Hichilema embarked on a nationwide consultation tour, holding town halls in all 10 provinces. He made his case directly to the people, bypassing the traditional media gatekeepers. The momentum began to shift. August saw intense backroom negotiations. Sources close to the presidency revealed that compromise amendments were drafted, concessions designed to win over moderate opposition members and independent MPs. The original 47-page document was revised, trimmed, and refined. Then came September. 3 independent MPs, previously opposed, publicly announced they would support the amended version. The calculus had changed. The opposition realized their blockade was crumbling. On December 12, 2024, the National Assembly convened for what everyone knew would be the decisive vote. The public gallery was packed. Television cameras captured every moment. And when the speaker called for the vote, the chamber held its breath. The final tally, 108 in favor, 73 against, with 7 abstentions. Bill 7 had passed. Direct evidence. President Hichilema addressed the nation just hours after the vote, his voice steady but carrying unmistakable emotion. Today, democracy has spoken. Not through violence. Not through intimidation. But through the constitutional process that binds us all together as Zambians. Bill 7 represents not the will of one party, but the collective aspiration of a people determined to build a more transparent, more accountable, and more just society. He continued, his cadence building. I know there are those who oppose this legislation. I respect that opposition. That is their democratic right. But I want to be very clear about something. This bill was not crafted in darkness. It was debated openly. It was amended based on legitimate concerns. And it was passed by the elected representatives of the Zambian people. Opposition leader in parliament, Brian Mundable, offered a starkly different perspective in his post-vote press conference. What we have witnessed today is not a democratic triumph but a democratic tragedy. The ruling party used its numerical advantage to ram through legislation that fundamentally alters the balance of power in this country. They claim to have consulted. They claim to have compromised. But the reality is that the core provisions that we found most objectionable remain intact. When pressed by journalists about whether the PF would challenge the bill, Mundable was unequivocal. We will explore every constitutional avenue available to us. This is not over. Not by a long shot. Civil society leader Fumba Chama, a prominent activist and executive director of the Civil Society Constitution Agenda, provided perhaps the most nuanced take during an interview with Radio Phoenix. Look, I've been critical of both sides throughout this process. But what I will say is this. The fact that this bill includes provisions for enhanced freedom of assembly, for greater media independence, and for stronger protections against arbitrary detention, these are wins. Real wins for ordinary Zambians. Are there concerns? Yes. The provisions around electoral management need continued scrutiny. But let's not throw out the baby with the bathwater. In a particularly revealing moment during parliamentary debate, Justice Minister Malambo Haimbi addressed concerns about executive overreach directly. The honorable members opposite keep saying this bill gives too much power to the presidency. I ask them, where? Show me the clause. Show me the provision. Because what I see is a bill that subjects the executive to greater accountability, that strengthens Parliament's oversight function, and that creates independent commissions that cannot be dissolved by presidential decree. If that's a power grab, then we have very different definitions of that term. Former President Rupiah Banda, speaking from his residence in Lusaka, offered a measured elder statesman's view. In my time, we faced similar battles over constitutional reform. What I learned is that democracy is messy. It's loud. It's contentious. But it works if we let it. My advice to all parties is simple. Respect the process, respect the outcome, and focus on implementation with integrity. Deeper analysis. So what does the passage of Bill 7 actually mean for Zambia moving forward? Constitutional law expert Professor Munandulo of Cornell University, who has advised multiple Zambian governments, suggests the implications are profound. This is the most significant constitutional reform Zambia has undertaken since the 2016 amendments. It touches on fundamental questions of governance, separation of powers, individual rights, electoral integrity. If implemented properly, it could strengthen democratic institutions. If implemented poorly, it could create new problems. The bill's passage has triggered varied reactions across Zambia's political landscape. The Socialist Party issued a statement calling the bill a step forward, but insufficient. They argue that true democratic reform requires economic transformation alongside political change. Traditional leaders in the northwestern province expressed concern about provisions they believe diminish their customary authority, though the government maintains that cultural institutions are protected under separate constitutional provisions. International observers have been largely positive. The European Union's representative to Zambia praised the transparent legislative process, while the African Union noted the bill's alignment with continental democratic standards. But ambiguities remain. Legal scholars are already debating the interpretation of certain clauses, particularly those dealing with emergency powers and the definition of national security interests that could justify restrictions on civil liberties. These provisions, though narrower than in previous drafts, still grant considerable discretion to executive authorities. There's also the question of implementation. Zambia has a history of progressive laws that falter at the enforcement stage. Will the institutions created by Bill 7, the Enhanced Human Rights Commission, the Reformed Electoral Commission, actually be empowered with adequate resources and independence? Or will they become paper tigers, impressive in statute but impotent in practice? Political analyst Laura Mitty raised this concern pointedly. We've been here before. We pass ambitious legislation, we celebrate, and then nothing changes on the ground. The test of Bill 7 won't be its passage. It will be what happens in the next election, in the next protest, in the next investigation of government corruption. Perhaps most significantly, this legislative victory marks a consolidation of President Hichilema's political power. After years of electoral defeats, arrest, and opposition, he has now demonstrated he can govern effectively with his parliamentary majority. This will embolden his reform agenda going forward, but it also places greater responsibility on his shoulders. Success and failure will be his to own. The opposition, meanwhile, faces a moment of reckoning. Their strategy of total resistance has failed. They must now decide, do they adapt, seeking to influence implementation and enforcement? Or do they continue confrontational politics, risking further marginalization? And hovering over all of this is the 2026 election. Bill 7 will inevitably become a campaign issue. The ruling party will tout it as evidence of their commitment to reform. The opposition will use it to mobilize their base around fears of executive overreach. And Zambian voters will ultimately render the final verdict on whether this democratic win truly changed everything or just rearranged the furniture. So there you have it, viewers, the story of Bill 7, a legislative battle that captivated a nation and may well define President Hichilema's legacy. Thank you so much for watching today's edition of InspirAfrica Official. This is the kind of story we live for: complex, consequential, and deeply human. Democracy isn't a spectator sport, and neither is understanding it. What do you think about Bill 7? Do you see it as a democratic triumph, or do you share the opposition's concerns? Are you optimistic about implementation, or skeptical? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one, and I genuinely want to hear from you. Your perspectives make this community what it is. We'll be following this story closely in the weeks and months ahead, tracking implementation, analyzing impacts, and holding all sides accountable. Because that's what journalism is supposed to do. Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and never stop questioning. I'm Nakash, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.